If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging. For many, aging well is simply not getting sick, maintaining some level of cognitive function, and being able to be active. In this episode, we discuss successful aging. More specifically, we discuss the difference between ordinary aging and extraordinary aging.
So someone once asked me a question. Do you know the difference between ordinary and extraordinary? The answer was that little extra, right? And so I thought that would be a great topic for today's Aging Well podcast is if we are going to preach the positive sides of aging well, then why settle for mediocre when we're aging? Why be ordinary as we age well when we can be extraordinary? We can have that little bit of extra. What do you think about that?
I always, in my blog and other writings, even as I teach, I tend to write extraordinary with parentheses around the extra because I tend to think of extraordinary as being, just that 98-year-old person that deadlifts 300 pounds. And, well, that can never be me. So, I just keep going the path I'm going. But each in our own way can be beyond ordinary in our aging and in our lifestyles. And so, I think it's important to talk about going beyond just the ordinary aging process. And there's one article I'd come across, looked at several articles this week kind of regarding successful aging. And there's one article that comes from the Concordia Life Plan Community website. It's titled 3 Key Components of Successful Aging. And, they talk about what is successful aging. And they said successful aging is the process of growing older while maintaining physical health, cognitive abilities, and strong social relationships. And it also talks about what it is not. It's not a one description fits all for successful aging. And again, that's where I think we have that individualized extraordinary, extraordinary for yourself. But I find it interesting that they define successful aging as the process of growing older while maintaining physical health, cognitive abilities, and strong relationships. To me, that is ordinary successful aging, whereas extraordinary successful aging is rather than maintaining physical health. Let's see if we can improve our physical health as we age. Let's get stronger. I saw a article the other day, and I'm going to see if I can kind of find it here quickly because I did share it on social media. So and it's right near my top. So it's a video on breakingmuscle.com. It's watch this 80-year-old deadlift 150 kilograms, which is 330.7 pounds on his birthday. So he's 80 years old. I'm like, that's awesome. But my goal right now, yesterday in my workout, not to boast or anything, because it's really not that significant. There's tons of other 59-year-olds that can deadlift a lot more. But for me, it was a pretty good deadlift. I did. Using a hex bar, I was able to deadlift for 2 reps, 425 pretty easily. And my goal is to actually do more than that. So if I can maintain that lift for another 20.7, or what is it? I don't know, whatever the breakdown is, about less than 21 years, because in 21 years, I'll be 80. Then that's going to be a far more impressive video. look at this 80-year-old who's 6'5", deadlifting 400 plus pounds. That's kind of my goal. And there's going to be some incremental improvement in that, but also if I can simply maintain where I am at, then when I'm 80, it's going to be much, much more impressive. It's probably not that impressive for a 59-year-old, deadlifting just over 400 pounds, but an 80-year-old?
I don't know, man. I think in today's society, how a good majority of society is, I think that's pretty impressive.
But again, we're looking at ordinary aging versus extraordinary aging. Ordinary aging, most people who are just aging ordinarily and we'd consider fairly successful aging are getting to the gym 3 times a week. They're not significantly losing muscle mass. They are still pretty active and they're still able to do some things, still able to play with their grandkids, but they're still slowing down at a certain rate. Extraordinary is you are defying that aging process and trying to push yourself even more, and when I kind of shared this article, I talked about wanting to maintain a 400-pound plus. Ideally my goal is 200 kilograms, a nice even number, but that's going to be, what is that, about 240, well, it's 240 pounds. Come on, it's easy math. I'm not far from doing that. I haven't done it yet, but I know it's achievable. And by my 60th birthday, I intend to surpass that. And if I can maintain that, then the ordinary becomes extraordinary. And a lot of really moving from ordinary aging to extraordinary aging is just trying to do a little bit more than just hitting the maintenance mark.
Just a little extra.
Yeah, just a little bit more, because you do a little bit more than the guy next to you that's doing nothing 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. That gap between you is growing significantly. And, you're seeing it probably in your age group. How old are you now?
I just turned 34 in August.
34. How many of your peers from college have maintained where they were in their 20s for 10 years or so?
Some of them have. The ones that were in the exercise science degree with me, a lot of them have, but
they better have.
A lot of them. Other ones, not so much. Even myself, within these last 2 years, but I'm getting back on that wagon. Enough is enough, and I'm sick of feeling the crumminess of the effects of when the world shut down.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You can even look at managing COVID in an ordinary fashion or an extraordinary fashion.
Right.
There's a lot of people that have come up with countless excuses for why they're worse off now than they were pre-COVID, when there are many others who took that opportunity to, since they're at home, to do more home exercise, getting out walking more. For myself, I was able to take the time that I wasn't commuting and translate that into more exercise, more reading. So, my spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social development was much greater because I had more opportunity.
See, I didn't have that opportunity, but I'm now getting that opportunity again. So during the time of the pandemic, where I worked, there was a ton of overtime that was optional, but it was also strongly suggested to be mandatory. So it was it created a very sedentary lifestyle and just focus. Now that we're coming to the end of that, it's like, okay, let's get back into the swing of things. Let's start focusing on my health. During the time, I will say my spiritual health, definitely huge improvement during that. So I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but
no, that's okay. And I think, that difference between ordinary aging and extraordinary aging also is an element of choice. What do we do with those opportunities or lack thereof, and how we prioritize what we can do with what's available. So I always use that phrase, opportunity cost.
Right.
That if you have 24 hours in a day, which all of us do, so there's no ifs or buts about it, you do. How are you using that time? And if, say, work takes a bigger chunk of that. You have to do more overtime. There are a lot of people out there that aren't as fortunate as I am to have a kind of a shorter work day. Although, we always joke in academia that you have more freedom as a PhD because you can choose how to spend your 80-hour work week.
Right.
So how you manage your time, you have a little bit more flexibility with it, which is wonderful. But some people that have kind of a 9 to 5 type of job, or maybe working 2 jobs and things like that, it becomes a bit more difficult. But we still, to become extraordinary, we have to choose what we don't do and what we do. And sometimes we have to give things up in order to make the time to do the things that are going to help us to age more successfully. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes great sense. And I'm actually glad you're bringing this up. I feel like, this is my personal opinion, but I feel that a lot of people in the society that we are living in today, a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say victim mentality, but they focus on a lot of the negative. Oh, I was given the short end of the stick, or, oh, I was dealt these cards. Therefore, I can't give the same opportunity as this individual over here who was blessed with X, Y, and Z, or they were blessed with good genetics, or their looks, or physical appearance, or richness, or whatever the case may be. It hasn't always been this way. It used to be work hard and you will achieve anything. And we've kind of transitioned into, well, they have the advantage over me, therefore I'm going to give up, and that's not fair. Well, yeah, a lot of people get dealt, a poor hand, or a lot of people do get the short end of the stick, but that doesn't mean you have an opportunity in front of you to just give up. In fact, it has an opportunity to improve on that. You don't have to wait for a door of opportunity to open. You can start knocking on those doors and see if someone answers it. What's really cool about where we live is, if you don't like the position that you're in, if you don't like where you're at in life, you have the opportunity to change it, but you have to be the one willing to change it. Don't point your finger at like, well, this obstacle's in front of me, or this person's not allowing me to, or, I don't have this skill set, or I have this hindrance. Move forward. But the real challenge is, especially in the subject of aging well, how do we encourage an individual to unleash their inner Jack LaLanne, right? To challenge themselves, to be better, to move forward as they're aging. I feel like that's almost like a lost personality trait in today's society.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. Well, and I think, we have become a society too where, I think you mentioned kind of the victim scenario. We hear a lot anytime you bring up some particular, what may be perceived by some to be presenting a fault in somebody, you're described as shaming them in that particular regard. And, I think there maybe some who listen to this podcast and hear us talking about ordinary successful aging versus extraordinary successful aging, and saying, well, you're shaming those who are, not as fortunate to age as well as you, or have the opportunities to lift weights and eat well and do all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
No, not at all.
But I would argue that, hey, why can't we talk about that? And I'm, just kind of, as you were talking, I was kind of scrolling through another article that I had recently found that is titled, "What is Successful Aging?" And again, we'll put this in the description notes. It's from Better Health While Aging, which looks to be a geriatrics blog. This is written by a doctor and a master of public health, and it's built off of administration on aging, leading the natural observance of Older Americans Month, which we got to have a month for everything, now.
Right.
Older Americans Month, the theme was engage at any age. And she says, I found myself thinking that this would be a nice opportunity to consider just what does it mean to succeed or do well as an older adult. And she kind of goes on, and I might be, missing some points in summarizing this, but she basically says it's not an easy question to answer. It's long been a subject of debate, and she talks about some of the common and problematic issues with the definition of successful aging, which we really just kind of recently, previously defined, which she says comes from an article by Rowe and Kahn in the 1990s that proposed that the model of successful aging is freedom from disease and disability, high cognitive and physical functioning, and active engagement with life, which is basically the definition we just previously mentioned. And they said that gerontologists have gone way past this model, but it's pretty close to what many people have in mind when they think of successful aging or aging well. That's a direct quote there, by the way.
Oh, right.
And it says, and certainly what many images of older adults convey, people who may look older, but otherwise appear to do everything that they could do earlier in life. And it goes on. And she seems to, in this article, challenge that notion that, we shouldn't be looking at distinguishing between successful aging and just successful living at any age, that we are doing a disservice in a way of kind of differentiating between what is successful at the various ages. And I don't agree with that. She talks about people who I would say is probably in the category of ourselves. They propose that those who maintain good physical health, mental health, and engagement in social activities without any conscious coping efforts be referred to as the lucky agers or lucky agers. I don't see there being luck in that. And I don't think successful aging is something that is a matter of luck. There are certainly people who have kind of won the gene pool. And, you always see articles about some octogenarian that's celebrating their birthday, and they smoke a pack of cigarettes a day and attribute their longevity to drinking a glass of bourbon every day and all these other kind of things that some might consider to be unhealthy behaviors. They probably could be a lot, or will be maybe a lot older if they change their lifestyle a little bit more and live a little bit healthier. But she points out that most people will not be lucky, and they have to find ways to cope with and adapt to age-related stressors, which include chronic illness, social losses, and a quote-unquote lack of person-environment fit. And I'm not going to dive into this too much. She challenges kind of a model that says that the main quality of life outcomes should be self-evaluation of success, life satisfaction, meaning in life, positive affective state, which basically means positive mood or emotions, and valued activities. Now, a lot of that I wouldn't challenge. What are your thoughts on that? This idea of self-evaluation of success. So
It's dangerous. I think we all have a different definition of success. My definition is going to be different than your definition of what success is. My current definition of success as a 34-year-old is way different than my definition of success when I was a 24-year-old. The older I become, the more life experience I get, my definition of success changes, right? The more I am exposed to life scenarios, or I can actually see, the grass. There's that old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. Then water your grass, right? You
Okay.
don't have to worry about what's going on in that grass. Maybe there's a lot of manure over there that's making it green, but you don't see that. So just focus on your own grass, water it. Self-success, that can get, in my opinion, I think it can get dangerous. But if you focus on yourself, on what you believe is successful, and you're following that route, I don't think there's any harm. But it's when you start comparing and comparing yourself to others and their success, that's where it can get.
Okay. I was starting to get a little lost there in
Nope.
how you were kind of evaluating self-evaluation. I think there can be some limitations to self-evaluation of success.
Right.
I agree that we should not be comparing ourselves to others because everybody's scenarios are a little bit different. Our genetics are different. Our environments are different. Our opportunities are different and things like that. But oftentimes, self-evaluation of success permits us to be complacent or to diminish the opportunities that we have. That we think, well, I can't never do that. So this is good health for me. I mean, I'm just happy. My parents had heart disease, and I'm into my 60s now, and I haven't had a heart attack yet. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm overweight, but I'm not morbidly obese. Sometimes we can limit our success if we don't have a growth mindset.
Right.
And look at, this is what my experience with people aging has been, and I'm a little bit better than that. So I'm successful. But are you as successful as you possibly can? And so when we look at self-evaluation of success, again, it can't be compared with others. It needs to be, am I achieving my highest level of potential with the opportunities that I've been given? And what can I do to improve that likelihood of success and the magnitude of success that I'm doing? So if my environment isn't benefiting me in the aging process, what can I do differently? So we can go to the gym, we can get health equipment, we can change our diet. What are the things that we can change? We can stop smoking. We can get outdoors more often. And that is kind of, to me, one of the things that separates ordinary aging from extraordinary aging is not only that we evaluate our success and look to be successful, but not only look to success being at least at or above, slightly above the norm, but how can we boost ourselves even further beyond that norm?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the competitive spirit, right? There's nothing wrong with striving for excellence. And
as long as we're not competing against our next door neighbor, it's like, what can I do better? And that's that betterment mentality. One of my mottos is be your best today, be better tomorrow.
Right.
And that doesn't stop once you hit a certain age. Am I my best today, given my circumstances, given my age, given the opportunities that I've had? If I live that, I get out, I'm active today, I've not been sick, I've had good mental health. What can I do to be better tomorrow? That is to me, that cusp between ordinary and extraordinary.
Right. It's always that little bit of extra that we put forth in. In my opinion, I don't think anyone should strive for mediocre. You shouldn't be okay with being mediocre. You should want to be the best version of yourself. There's a old quote, and I strongly live by it. I think that losers make excuses and winners make it happen, right? And you can come up with all the excuses in the world, and you can be okay with being complacent and mediocre. But why? Why would you not want to take the steps that are given in order to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah.
Well, not even for yourself, but for your future self. Do that person a favor, right? And that's what aging well is all about.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about mediocre needs to be individualized.
Right.
I mean, you have somebody who works a rather ordinary job, and they might look at, well, I'm working as a custodian. That's not a very impressive position. I'm not really affecting people's lives. I've not really satisfied in my average mediocre life. And they're comparing themselves to somebody they went to school with that's now a neurosurgeon and making a lot of money and driving, the newest car and living in the biggest house. But you also don't see a person's been divorced 3 times, that car they're barely making the payments on, the house they're barely making the payments on. They got heart disease because they're under so much stress, and nobody likes them because they're just a complete jackass.
Right.
Whereas this custodian, everybody, he has the cleanest school around that he's cleaning, and the kids all love him because he smiles at everybody and lifts them up every day. That person is affecting so many more lives and is living much more extraordinarily. So, yeah, you have an ordinary job, but you can be extraordinary in that ordinary job. And then, again, it's the same with aging. We can settle on just kind of this average, normal, satisfactory path, but we can do more. And how can we do more? And that kind of comes to that second bullet point, which is life satisfaction. Where do we set the standards for our self-satisfaction? We talked a little bit about the hedonic treadmill, one of our least listened to podcasts, but one that I think is a very important concept, in that we kind of set our set point for our happiness, and we can continue to elevate that without being dissatisfied with our lives or being depressed about our lives. We can just continue to find new ways to boost our happiness, to produce our satisfaction in our life, and kind of goes to the next bullet, our meaning in life. If we have meaning to our life and purpose, and we're living a purposeful life, then that is going to help us to be much more extraordinary in our aging, rather than just kind of plugging along, hoping that, okay, I got a pulse today. That's good. It's a good day. I got my pulse. Well, what are you doing once you kind of wake up in the morning is what is moving you from ordinary to extraordinary.
And if you're in a phase of your life where you're like, well, I tried to be extraordinary, but it was such a mistake. Just remember, like, in the road of life, we don't make mistakes. We make learning opportunities, right? So learn from any mistake and capitalize on that, grow, develop a skill set. I kind of want to get back to those 3 main topics that were in that article, as far as physical health, mental health, and social health. I think as far as physical goes, I know we cover that a lot, especially in this podcast. And we talk about the physical, we talk about the nutritional. Mental health, I think that's going to be awesome, because it's not just our mental mind. That's also going to tie in with emotional health. It's going to tie in with spiritual health. And then as far as social goes, I think we've only talked about social health and going out to social events. I know we mentioned it in our wine tasting podcast, that one, the importance of having that support system and that social, we can do everything on our own, but having that social interaction, it's just one more thing that kind of pushes people to get out of that ordinary lifestyle and into that extraordinary, like surrounding ourselves with extraordinary people. I mean, that's just one more tool for success, in my opinion.
But, and I think sometimes too, with aging, it's even more, you almost, as you age, it almost becomes more important to become that influencer in people's lives rather than to be surrounding yourself. Because I think if you focus on that as you age, having those people around you, eventually they start to pass away. And the older we get, we start losing more and more friends. I lost 2 of my college fraternity brothers this year, and a couple other people from high school. And it's like, I don't feel that old. I shouldn't be losing friends that are actually younger than me or around my age. But eventually, as I keep getting older, I'm going to be losing more and more people around me. And if my goal is to keep living long and living well, and I'm into my hundreds, I might be alone in my peer group, right? But I will get to the point where my life satisfaction is going to come from who am I affecting? Whose lives am I touching on a daily basis? That's why I love the fact that I'm, just now getting into coaching, strength and conditioning for my son's high school wrestling team. My son's a senior. He's going to be graduating next year. But so many of these kids that are coming up, I want to see these freshmen through. And, eventually I want to have been around so long that I'm influencing people that I've never had contact with before or not. And my son is actually in Maryland right now. And so that dinging noise in the background is him texting me about the weight room at the hotel that he's at and the lack of weights for him to be able to work out. So I guess I'm raising him somewhat well. But where was I with that? I wanted to kind of bring in another article. There's, and again, we'll share the link to this. This is a article in ACTA Biomedicine that's titled Definitions of Successful Aging. It's a brief review of a multidimensional concept. And I think this article really does a nice job in a very short format to review what is it, what is this class concept of successful aging that we've been talking about, but how do we look at it in a more broader sense, such as healthy aging, active aging, productive aging, and they also say aging well. And in one figure I'm looking at here has kind of what is successful aging. And it divides it into two components. You have your subjective side and your objective side. From a subjective side, how do we feel about how we are aging and the things that we can do, in relative to other people. And I think perceptually, my goal with this podcast is to change a little bit of that subjectiveness for people to start realizing I can be more as I age and age well and want to be more. And then you have the objective side, which is pretty easy to measure. That's, your annual checkups. Are you, good cholesterol, good heart rate, good cardiovascular health, able to function fairly well, things that are measurable that are associated with aging, we can look at that. So we have, on paper, everything looks pretty good. But for a lot of people, they go and they get a good checkup at the doctors. They feel like, okay, I'm aging successfully. And so subjectively, they think, okay, I'm successful. But for some of us, we go and we get those objective measures. It's like, yeah, but I could be doing better.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can deadlift 300 pounds. That's great for somebody my age. I should be proud of that. But I want to do more. We talked, I think it was episode, 48 or 49, when we interviewed Candace White and her client, Sue. Sue's going to, her plan is by the time she's 60, she wants to compete in a powerlifting event and has really never lifted weights prior to being 58. That, to me, is on the path to extraordinary aging. And I think that is an important concept to consider, that subjectively we can alter what is important to us as we age. And then it breaks this down further into the biomedical aspects and then psychosocial factors. And that's kind of defined in those earlier definitions that we brought up. And, when we're looking at biomedical, our health and our ability to do our average daily activities of living, our physical function. And again, there's a subjectiveness to that, but there's also an objectiveness to that. What is my VO2 max as I exercise? That's a very measurable, objective measure of cardiovascular health. But being able to get out and go for a 5-mile hike is both subjective and objective, depending on, what do we want to accomplish with that hike? If I have to use the little, I see a lot of people out walking with those little, what do they call them, like the Swiss poles,
little ski thing, where they
ski poles,
hold it in their hand. Yeah.
And if they're using those for stability and balance, first of all, I mean, that's great. It's helping them to get out to be a bit more active. But if they become increasingly dependent upon those, that to me isn't necessarily successful aging. If that 5 mile hike is becoming increasingly difficult as we age, that limits, again, it's a subjective definition of successful aging. To me, that's not as aging well as I would prefer. And then cognitive function. I mean, there's certainly very objective measures that we can have of cognitive function. Most of us, we expect a little bit of cognitive decline. Every time I forget a name or something like that, I always, blame it on, having a senior moment or something like that. But, some of it's a natural cause. Some of it is just probably my laziness in using some of the cognitive skills that I have to be able to remember names, or just having so many damn names to remember as you get older. You meet more and more people, have more and more students. And then psychosocial factors are, we're psychologically well adapted. And I think that's going to be becoming much more challenging with some of the generations coming up, because they haven't experienced some of the, I don't know how to frame it without offending the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs and stuff like that. And maybe even your generation.
What, the millennials? Oh, no. We're offended.
We kind of grew up, in that, don't be offended generation, and, kind of suck it up a little bit. And, I can go on and on with that, but probably the more I say, the more I might offend somebody. But, how are we able to deal psychologically with our circumstances is going to be an effect on our aging process. And then, are we actively engaged in life? And for some people, just kind of doing normal things like, maybe going to bingo once a week, they're feeling socially engaged, or, they are babysitting their grandchildren, and that's their subjective quality of active engagement in life. Whereas other people want to challenge themselves. My dad, when I wouldn't say he got forced into retirement, but when his wife took a position in New York City, they had to move from Pittsburgh, and he had to kind of give up his consulting business. And, he was old enough, retirement was reasonable at that point, but he wasn't just going to sit around while she went to work each day. And he got involved in acting and, started doing background work for a number of different shows. He was a permanent extra in the first season of Law and Order Criminal Intent, which was kind of fun for me, as I was in my first year really teaching at Eastern Michigan. I'd go home from working late, preparing classes, and sit down and try and unwind by watching Law and Order Criminal Intent, or some of the different Law and Order episodes, because he was in multiple different episodes of the different shows, and look for him in the background. Oh, okay, there he is. And then he got into some different movies, and he was engaging in a much different capacity as he aged. And to me, I always look at that as that is extraordinary aging.
Right.
And, being actively engaged, doing things, giving back, using it as the opportunity to maybe coach kids, or, teach at a community college, or whatever it might be, being more actively engaged. And again, that's going to have objective and subjective components to that. And then they break it down in terms of 3 really categories of aging successfully. You have healthy aging, which I would put at that as being more successful, ordinary aging, active aging being a little bit better off there. And then really extraordinary aging would be productive aging, where you're doing more as you are aging, you are growing, you are contributing more, and really magnifying your purpose to a greater extent as you age. And that, to me, then they bring this all together to aging well. So I think this article is a kind of a perfect schematic of what we are trying to accomplish, I think, within this podcast. Any thoughts?
Well, I kind of wanted to go, my thoughts, I wanted to go back to the first article that we touched on about the physical, the mental, and the social, and just because I agree with almost everything that you said, but how they break it down with the physical, they break it down into categories on how to stay aging extraordinary and successfully at the same time. The physical aspect is see a doctor, stay active, make healthy food choices, get enough sleep, and don't ignore chronic pain.
Yeah, and I think again we're defining that more ordinary aging. That you're doing well if you meet these 5 minimums. That you're seeing your doctor. I mean, from that standpoint, I don't go to my doctor enough. So I might not be aging well because it's been a couple of years since I've gone to my physician. But, I haven't seen the need because, as they say there, you're feeling, well, when you're feeling ill, take advantage of preventative health measures such as a yearly checkup, flu shot, and age-appropriate exams. That, again, I think is a minimum. But when you're feeling ill and then you go to the doctor, you haven't really done more than the minimum in terms of aging well because you're feeling ill because you haven't done something in the front end of that. And, so that taking advantage of preventative health measures, certainly going to the doctor should be preventative, getting the checkup so that you're finding if there's some polyp in your colon or something like that. So you have that colon exam, having your prostate checked, the fun things that, we males love to have done when we go to the doctor's office.
And on the other side, for the female listeners, the stuff they go through.
Yeah, breast, examinations and
the pap
pap smears and all those. Again, the annual things that can help catch really significant diseases that may be beyond our control, because there's a lot of really healthy people that don't notice the symptoms, maybe, especially individuals who are much more athletic and have a high pain threshold. It's very easy to just dismiss things like, I can just push through this. I don't need to worry about this. And it get worse and worse.
Oh, that's me. 100%.
Yeah. So
there's something going on with me right now. I've been having a lot of internal pain in my stomach, and I'm just unhealthily ignoring it. And I'm okay with that.
That's not necessarily extraordinary aging.
It's not.
But again, a goal should be to have those checkups with your doctor just be such a kind of routine thing. You just go, so, okay, everything's looking good. Everything's checking out here. I'll see you next year and, keep aging well. And that is the more extraordinary approach. But only going when you're feeling ill and, just looking at these preventative measures, annual checkup, flu shot, and, doing your appropriate exams is really the minimal preventative aspect that you should be doing. What do we emphasize in here in terms of preventative medicine? Don't smoke. So if you do smoke, stop smoking. That's not on this list of physical health for successful aging. Exercise. Increase your physical activity.
Yep.
So exercise and physical activity.
Consumption.
And also, diet, eating right. What are we doing to eat right to minimize that? And they do, number 2 is stay active. And so that, we keep preaching, but,
Number 3 is make healthy food choices.
Food choices as well. But when we look at number 2, it says exercise is essential for maintaining good health and can be incorporated into your lifestyle regardless of your physical abilities. Chair exercises, for example, are a great way for those with limited mobility to be active. Utilize your gym, a trainer, a physical therapist, or a friend to help. Nothing wrong with any of that. But again, that's the ordinary piece of it. You have limited mobility. Rather than doing exercises that accommodate for that limited mobility, what can we do to improve our mobility?
I see what you're saying.
And that is the boundary between ordinary successful aging and extraordinary successful aging, is doing more to get beyond the things that are limiting us, to expand our growth, to improve ourselves and get better, rather than just not letting these limitations limit us too much.
Right.
That makes sense.
No, totally. A limited mindset is actually just any mindset. Any mindset is arguably one of the most powerful things we have, and we'll talk on that when we hop on over to mental health.
Yeah.
But a limited mindset can either hinder us or it can launch us into that next level of where we want to be. But you know, and I've said this in previous podcasts, and it's an old quote. It's whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, the others bullet points in there: get enough sleep, healthy food choices. We kind of have talked about that a lot.
I'm really glad they talk about getting enough sleep because I feel that we don't even talk about the importance of sleep on our podcast.
I think we've talked about it quite a few times. It is essential, and I think not only getting enough sleep, but having a regular sleep pattern is what moves us into that, extraordinary aging.
Well, some people have a good, they're like, I'm getting my 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But you're right. Sleep pattern is a huge factor of that. Because if you have an individual such as myself with sleep apnea, I'm getting a proper, adequate time frame of sleep. But is it good sleep?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Spending 7 to 8 hours in bed is not good sleep. We can benefit that from getting to bed at a regular time so your body knows it's time to go to sleep. I mean, heck, my dogs know when it's my bedtime.
Right.
Yeah. It's weird. Kind of in a habit now. They want a treat right before I go to bed. And when I get up, or they sense it's 9 o'clock, they know it's bedtime. And our yellow lab starts going berserk. And he just says this, like, he's normally a really sedate dog, but he starts kind of going really hyper at 9 o'clock. And it's like, oh, you guys want a treat? You want something? And, I just kind of play with them a little bit, like, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want? And they kind of keep hinting to the closet where we keep the treats, and they get their treat. And then I go up to bed. But, my family knows 9 o'clock is my bedtime.
Right.
And I get up early. I don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but I'm under more of the Arnold Schwarzenegger mindset when he famously said it, if you're sleeping more than 6 hours, sleep faster, right? And, I agree with that. I mean, 6 hours really should be the minimum. If you can get 6 good quality hours of sleep, that gives you 2 additional hours in the day to do a lot more productively. And, it's really that regularity of the sleep, the quality of the sleep, more so than the hours of sleep. Because a lot of times we can say, well, if 7 to 8 hours is good, then 9 to 10 is even better. Well, that's not better. And if we're getting up at an habitual time and our body gets on the right schedule, hormonally and physiologically, our bodies are going to function a lot better. And so not only getting enough sleep, but timing of that sleep and the regularity of that sleep is going to have a critical factor in how successful we age.
Yeah. And I actually strongly encourage anyone who are interested into what to do with sleep. There's a lot of sleep research that's out there, especially articles that the Navy SEAL do in order to hit that REM sleep as fast as possible. Look into that. It's actually based off of studies and theories that Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla had when they were going a few days without sleep, but then they would hit that 45-minute increment. So it's actually the really powerful articles. I strongly suggest anyone dive into that if you're like, man, I'm not getting adequate sleep. I'm sleeping, but it's not good. I'm not feeling rested.
And if you are having to, take melatonin to get to sleep at night, or sleeping pills, and then having to drink plenty of coffee in the morning just to get going. I love coffee. That's the only reason I drink it. The caffeine, I can drink coffee right before bed and it doesn't disrupt my sleep. And so I'm fortunate with that, but it's not going to really wake me up other than maybe from a mental standpoint, it just kind of, tells me it's the start of the day to get going. What about chronic pain? They talk about don't ignore chronic pain. What are your thoughts on that as we look at these effects on aging?
Well, what they're saying is chronic pain can contribute to a decrease in physical activity, forcing people to take medication and all that. And it's tough because the athlete in me is, push through the pain. But there's a difference between chronic pain and just an uncomfortable like muscle ache.
Well, and you have to look at what's the circumstances behind the chronic pain.
Right.
There is injury, and then there are things that are just, maybe they're joint issues that we can address without minimizing our physical activity. It says chronic pain can contribute to a decrease in physical activity. We don't want chronic pain to decrease our activity, but again, we don't want to mask the pain with just drugs and keep pushing through it and get hurt. That's athletes are able to be athletes because they can push through the pain, but their bodies take a huge toll in that process. As we age, we may need to alter the physical activity to manage that pain a little bit, but we should never consider decreasing the physical activity. It's modify the physical activity and deal with the source of that chronic pain and find ways that we can boost our activity, get similar activity without furthering that injury.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's talk about the mental well-being. Now, mental well-being, how that article breaks it down, they have take on a challenge, work part-time or volunteer, invest in memory training apps, engage in spiritual activities, which I think is going to be one of the most important, and stay positive, which kind of ties into all of the previous 4 points in this. I could not agree more. I think that taking on a challenge in life, it gives you that external motivation for your internal motivation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's that whole notion of be your best today, be better tomorrow. It's not be your best every day, and just your best maybe tends to decline a little bit, but it's okay because I'm still being my best. We want to try and improve on who we are spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. And so that is to challenge ourselves.
Right. Well, and it's also, from personal experience, when you're younger, you go to the gym because you're training for a purpose, whether it's sports or just attractiveness, aesthetics. You're training for a purpose, but that purpose kind of, the older you get, your mindset changes. So find another purpose. Take on a challenge. I know for me, I just took on a weight loss challenge. I just signed up for that, and it's given me that little external motivation because I don't want to lose. As far as, just your career wise, take on a challenge at work, right? Do something that's a little bit out of your job description and see where it takes you, right? Don't settle for your 9 to 5. Oh, I can't do that. That's out of my description. If you look at almost any quote unquote successful individual who's advanced their career really fast, they were doing things that was outside of their job description. Challenge yourself. Take on a challenge that you wouldn't normally do, and you want to do it because it's there.
Yeah.
Would you agree on that?
Absolutely.
Perfect. The portion 2, the work part-time or volunteer.
We kind of already talked about that.
Right.
That need to just do a little bit more and not just become complacent in your aging process.
Well, even in the younger listeners who are working a full-time job, like just that volunteer work, maybe do something on the weekend, clean up a park. It goes a long way for your mental health. Mm-hmm. It truly, truly does. Number 3 is a little controversial, but it's invest in a memory training app. What do you feel about that?
Again, it's why do everything have to be technologically driven?
Right.
I think sometimes we might want to get away from some of that technology. Now, some of us and older individuals, technology is a bit more challenging, so these might help. Gives us a little bit more accessibility, but I don't think it necessarily has to be a memory training app. It could just simply be doing other things to challenge ourselves intellectually. And I encourage everybody to kind of go back to my interview with Dr. Winningham,
right,
and talking about some of these aspects of, what benefits our memory. Like, for example, doing a crossword puzzle
I was
is
just
not
going to
as
say.
beneficial as we often say, but those apps that are requiring us to kind of learn new things as we go are going to be much more beneficial. And so just simply getting a memory app isn't necessarily going to benefit us. It doesn't have to be an app. It may be just simply
A book where
a
someone
book,
can read.
right? Or even like reading a mystery,
Right.
something where you have to engage yourself in it. So there's a lot of things that we can do to improve our memory in that regard.
Well, I think like Sudoku,
Well, that was one of the big ones he recommended was Sudoku.
Sudoku.
Never got into that.
I think reading. I think even simply joining a trivia team, right? Or there's it's not an app, it's a game. Like you can literally find it in the game section, and it's a bunch of cards, and you lay the cards on a table, and then you flip over one card and you try and find the matching card. Like that's a fun game that you can play with your kids or your grandkids, or you can have your neighbors come over and you can have a game night. Like it's a it's a micro thing that you can do, but it still affects your brain. It's memory capacity.
Again, and just anything you can do to engage the brain is going to be a good positive. And it talks about engaging in spiritual activities. I think, that can go in a lot of different directions. I mean, a lot of people just kind of habitually go to church and they think they're engaging and they're not necessarily really engaging. To me, spiritual goes beyond just simply, as they talk about the faith-based community, going into just any activity that is giving you that sense of purpose in life and moving you away from the idea that you are at the center of the universe. Sometimes as we get older, we start thinking we're more and more at the center of the universe than we were when we were younger. Sometimes when we're younger, we're maybe a little bit more in that. Maybe we go through cycles in life, but doing things that are just engaging you in being more other-centered is going to have a healthy benefit. And along with that is, their fifth point, which is staying positive. It's very easy to get into negativity. I know that's one of my big challenges, but I can do things in the morning that get me started in being positive. But then as soon as I get on the highway, all that gets dismissed. But it probably prevents me from becoming excessively negative.
That can also be slightly changed with being engaged in that spiritual activity, though. That alone can change mindsets, mentalities, positive energy, positive thought process. It all kind of the whole everything we listed in the mental health, it all goes hand in glove. Like it really does. And it actually segues into strong social relationships, which is the third one. And with those strong social relationships, they say maintain old friendships and make new ones, travel when you can, engage in laughter, consider social media, take a class or join a group, enjoy your grandchildren.
Friendships, the relationships, you're maintaining good, healthy relationships with the people around you, seek to make new relationships. And that kind of, I think, jumps to me to considering social media. I think social media can be a very destructive tool, but it can also, for those of us that are aging, and part of the reason why Facebook has been taken over by my generation and older people is that it has been possible for us to keep connected to people who we have known from the past. I increasingly almost every week I'm getting connected to somebody I went to high school or college with, and I couldn't keep those relationships because it moved around enough. And I have friends from all over the globe right now that I can stay connected with through social media. And that helps me quite a bit because I don't have a lot of physical interactions with people other than, my students and things like that. And it's a little bit different of a social relationship.
Well, I also think we also have to be weary of the negative portion of social media. We kind of talked about this earlier in this episode, where if you're comparing or you're contrasting yourself to another individual, social media that's usually where that happens is, oh man, this person got to travel. Oh man, this person just bought a new house. Oh man, this person did one more thing of success and they're living my dream. But in reality, we're not seeing how much they saved up for that traveling. We're not seeing the arguments that they had with their significant other in order to overcome those financial differences to purchase that house. Facebook is great to connect with him over there or her over here and ties us all into one community, but it also shows us only the positive of what we want to show an individual, right?
And I would probably argue that for those of us, and maybe it's just my social media group, but I see a lot more positivity on the older side. You are connecting with people maybe you normally wouldn't have connected with, or, I have friends that I was not that close with in high school that I'm much more closer with now on social media. And there's a greater appreciation for people's successes and what they're doing in life and encouraging. And I find it much more encouraging on the older end. I think it's the younger group that is tending to mismanage their social media to where they're allowing it to have its destructive side to it. And so,
well, and that goes back to what we were talking about with the mindset of that victim mentality, right? And overcoming that and spreading positivity truly does go a really long way.
I've probably mentioned it before. One of the things that I discovered in social media when I was starting to get really negative and I'd start, griping about things, what I learned to do was put out an encouraging word, basically saying what I needed to hear. And the number of people that would feedback, oh, thank you, it's like, I've had times when and I've told people that, when you see me being the most positive on social media, it probably means I'm going through the most crap right now. And when we take kind of that mentality and using it that way, that, okay, I'm feeling pretty crappy right now, but there's other people out there that are feeling crappy too. So I'm going to work to encourage them. In the process, we encourage ourselves and we get that feedback from other people that, begin to encourage us also.
See, that to me, that little extra of being positive, that pushes you into that extraordinary category. Just no one likes a whiner.
Yeah, nobody does.
Travel when you can. Now, someone told me this when we were in college and we were like in our young 20s. She ended up traveling. So she had her college paid for, but then she took out a student loan in order to travel the world. And I was like, why would you do that? And her logic was, I don't want to be like everyone else when they retire and then travel the world. Because she said, I want to be able to do it when I'm younger, when I can maintain that memory, when I have the youth to walk up a giant flight of stairs and I can see the world. And I don't know, that mindset, her speech, it kind of just stuck with me.
So borrowing money.
No, not the borrowing money part, but the traveling when you can, when you have the opportunity presented in front of you to travel, do it. And I don't care if you do it when you're younger. I don't care if you do it when you are retired because you've saved up and you planned accordingly. If you have the opportunity to travel and to see all of the amazing things that this world has to offer, or even the state that you live in, the wonders that your state is, go out, travel, plan a road trip, plan a flight, plan a cruise, whatever it is, get out there, go do it.
Yeah. And again, it's that opportunity cost piece. And I'm just kind of stuck on the fact that somebody would take out a student loan in order to travel. And, here we are in a period where, a lot of us are complaining about the government just kind of wiping clean a lot of, student debts because people can't afford to pay them off. And, when you hear of people that would actually borrow money and use it frivolously for their education, that is a bit bothersome to me. But when it says travel when you can, it's create those opportunities, make it part of your budget, make it, when you can do it, make the opportunities to be able to do it, engage yourself in your surroundings. Don't put yourself in debt to do it.
Okay, ignore the debt portion.
And don't dismiss other responsibilities in order to do it as well. I mean, it's like, you could be a grandparent and you decided, well, I'm going to just travel the world now that I'm retired, and your grandkids never get to know you, kind of stuff. And that's not necessarily healthy as well. So I think travel is good, but it's not the only thing that is going to help make us successfully age. I think travel when you can, if you want. There might be, some of us that like to just kind of stay a little bit more locally, and other people really like to travel. Don't, again, use that as a standard. Oh, I'm not successfully aging because I haven't traveled beyond my state, or I've never been out of the country, or I've been to Mexico and Canada, and that's it.
Within your means, right? Within your doors of opportunities that are open, it doesn't have to be traveling the world. It can be traveling the state. For example, we live in Oregon. There's a lot of beauties within Oregon. We got Mount Hood. We got the gorge. We got the entire coast. We got the sand dunes. We got the Oregon caves. We got the painted hills. We have so many amazing things just in Oregon. I'm sure each of the other 50 states have their own wonders as well.
Yeah.
Travel.
And you can travel the world without necessarily leaving your home too. I mean, with cable television and the internet, you can experience more as well. It's really, the idea here, I think, is to broaden your horizons and continue to broaden your horizons. Don't be living in the same box your entire life. And next one, we got to start wrapping this up here soon, is laughter. And I think, laughter just remains to me, one of the best forms of medicine. And just having the opportunity to just laugh your behind off is a healthy thing to do. And that's, laughing more doesn't make you necessarily age extraordinarily well. It just means you're going to benefit from it a little bit more. But don't lose that humor and sense of humor. We talked about social media, joining a group or take a class. Again, it's actively engaging yourself in your community,
right,
and the opportunities that are there.
And that can be a class, that can be a workout class, that can be silver sneakers, that can be a hobby, a musician. It can be, I joined a group of men talking about the stock market. And I have no idea what it is that they're talking about, but it's pretty cool. And it's just kind of mingling with those individuals as well. It's try something new, join a group. If you're interested, go for it.
And remember that successful aging is individualized, not to be comparing yourself with other people. Your idea of successful aging may not match what these researchers have given as their definition. As I mentioned, there is a subjective piece. There is a more objective piece to it. Hit both of those. Feel that you are aging well. What can you do to age better? And if you're continuing to look at it from the standpoint of, successful aging being a bit more of a target, I always like to look at wellness as a target where we continue to keep hitting that target, but the target gets smaller and smaller and smaller as we seek to grow and to improve on things. We're still hitting that target, but it becomes more and more difficult to be precisely on. And we keep striving to do better, to do better, to do better. That is going to be extraordinary aging.
Right. I think I think you nailed it.
Okay.
I think that you've set the listeners up for not only extraordinary aging, but the proper tools to age well.
Yeah. Be healthy in your aging, active in your aging, and be productive, and you will age well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.